Ring, ring. Ring, ring. Hello? The telephone. Arguably one of mankind's greatest inventions. But is it possible that the standard phone should actually be included in every ghost hunter's toolkit? And then we travel to Michigan to take a look at the story of a young man who loves to go hiking all by himself. Walking through the woods, enjoying nature, breathing in that fresh air. But one night would change all of that. One experience would make Julian fear the great outdoors. And that was the night when an army of the invisible invaded his campsite. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for our legacy Patreon supporter, Soft Pink Aurora. Woo! Woo! Yes! Little clouds floating in. Little Care Bear sitting on top. I picked the Care Bear up. I'm holding him. Hey, what's up, buddy? It's Hugs a lot. Oh, I'm hugging him. Okay, so Soft Pink Aurora, you are back. Let's go ahead and get this party started. Let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dune Buggy. Everyone climb on board as Soft Pink Aurora drives us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to a house in Anywhere, USA. Bing, 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 bing. Nice drive over the dunes to Anywhere, USA. We don't know exactly where this story takes place. We're going to cover two stories. You're like, damn it, Jason, is Big Bird in any of them? No. Not that I know of, at least. Maybe there's a Big Bird poster in one of these backgrounds. But we're going to take a look at two of these stories, short stories, because I have an overarching theme to them. First off, we're going to take a look at the story of a man. We'll name him Tom. We don't have any of the real names. We'll name him Tom, and we'll meet his wife, Judith. And they're asleep in bed one night, when all of a sudden, they hear a phone go off. Jason, you know people have cell phones now, and they don't all sound like rotary phones. Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, the phone's ringing. Maybe it's a ringtone or something like that. Maybe it's a pop song. Maybe Sabrina Carpenter's warbling somewhere in the distance. The point is that it wakes both Tom and Judith up, because not only is a phone going off in the middle of the night, which would be alarming enough, you always assume it's bad news if you get a call late at night. Not only that, it's not his phone ringing and it's not hers. And Tom's first instinct is, there's an intruder in the house. Somebody's in the house and their phone is ringing, right? Which would be pretty lucky for the people who are getting robbed or getting home invaded or whatever. If your intruder got a ill-timed phone call. He goes, oh my God, there's someone in the house, their phone's ringing. He jumps up and he's ready to fight whoever is in his home. And he begins to move through the house. Judith is not far behind him. He's going through the house looking for whoever broke in, and he can hear the phone still ringing, so he's following the sound, and it is coming out of the spare bedroom. So he opens the door and he scans the area. There's no one there. But he can still hear the phone ringing. It's in the spare bedroom, but it's coming from the wardrobe in the spare bedroom. He opens up the wardrobe. Inside of the wardrobe, he finds a storage container. He opens up the storage container, and inside, it's one of Tom's old phones. But he hasn't used this phone in 4 years. In fact, it doesn't even have a SIM card in it. When Tom reaches down and he picks up the phone, he's looking at it, the ringing stops. The next morning, Tom gets a call from a family member. His godmother died in the middle of the night. And he believes that's who was calling him. He goes, my godmother, she loved talking on the phone. She talked on the phone all the time. And I believe she was calling me that night. Really interesting to think about. we'll talk about the story real quickly. We'll move on to the next story. Was that the last phone number that the godmother had of his? And if that is the right, so that's your first question. There's a lot of people that I don't know their current phone number, but I have a vague recollection of their old number, or I have an old number saved into my phone. Who knows if they still even have that number? But even if that was the last number she had of his, the phone shouldn't have rang at all. There's no SIM card in it. It can't be connected to any network. Now you go, Jason, it could be a glitched phone, which is true. But after 4 years, whether or not there's a SIM card in it is a minor problem. The battery would be completely drained after 4 years. But here it is ringing in the middle of the night, the same night that his godmother died. Let's walk across the street to another house here in Anywhere, USA. And that first story, let me say this, that first story was posted online by someone going by the name CrestNZ. Now let's cross the street to another house here in Anywhere, USA. We're about to meet a man we will call Philip. The year is 2022. And I say man, probably young adult or maybe even late teenager would be a better term for him. Philip has had a tragedy happen in his home. His younger brother, Jonathan, has died. Horrible, right? I can't imagine losing someone that close in my family, especially at a younger age for both him and me. Like if I was 15 and one of my siblings died, I mean, it's just like, how do you even process that? Even now at 48, I worry about stuff like that. But anyways, Philip, it's not a hypothetical for him. He has to deal with that. His brother Jonathan dies. On the day of the funeral, after Jonathan has been buried and the family has returned back home to grieve and to celebrate. I think that's probably the wrong word. They're like, after the body's in the ground, they release a bunch of balloons. Yay! Finally, ice cream cake every day. Woohoo! It wasn't like that, right? But you know what I mean? There's like a celebration of life. You remember all the good times. They go back to the house. Ice cream cake. You're like, oh, this is what he would have wanted us to eat. Delicious ice cream cake. They go back to the house and Philip's there with his family members and friends and all of that. When all of a sudden Philip's phone rings. It's normal, right? You get phone calls during the day. Today's a day of grief, but he understands. He reaches in, he pulls his phone out, he looks at the caller ID. The phone call's coming from Jonathan. Has Jonathan's picture, has Jonathan's phone number clearly displayed. He's getting a call from Jonathan. Philip immediately thinks, I've gone insane. I'm hallucinating this. I actually have lost my mind due to grief. He really does believe that. And he begins to show the other people in the party, oh my God, look who's calling me. And that's partly because obviously it's super weird that he's getting a call from his brother, but even Philip says, he goes, I had to do that to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating. I needed someone else to look at the phone and go, oh my God, what? How is Jonathan calling you? I needed other people to see it, because if other people saw it and I was holding a phone that wasn't ringing, it was just a blank screen, then I need to go to a doctor. But the other people at the party also looked at it and he went, oh my God. And he's showing it to, not party, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean? He's showing it to multiple people and they all see. It's a picture of Jonathan, it's his phone number. Jonathan is calling Philip's phone. But Philip can't answer it. He's looking at it and it's continuing to ring and he can't answer it. He can't click that green button. And do you not do it out of fear? I don't know. I've never been in that situation. That would be super weird. You would think, well, why wouldn't he hit the green button? Why wouldn't he accept the call and put that phone to his ear? He doesn't, though. Instead, he says out loud, we are all home now. Philip says those words, and the phone stops ringing. Philip said that when his brother died, one of the items that he personally chose to put into the coffin, you can probably see where this is going, obviously. One of the things that Philip chose to have put in Jonathan's casket was Jonathan's school backpack. And inside that backpack was Jonathan's cell phone. Fascinating, right? Kind of sounds like creepypasta. A little bit, right? I know my technique isn't 100%, but it has served us well. I've caught a lot of fake stories this way. And that's why I like to reiterate it from time to time. I go through people's posting history, and if they post a lot of crazy stuff, I'll dismiss the story. If they post everything else is about sports and school and cars and kites and dog pictures and stuff like that, and then out of dozens and dozens of posts, they have one story like this, it does make you think, this really might be true. It does sound like creepypasta, I will be honest with you. But the reason why I wanted to say it, and that was posted online by someone whose username is complete gibberish. I'm not even going to try to say it. But my point is that both stories together, I think, point us in a particular area. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of stories out there like this. I have other stories ready to go that are the phone rings, you pick it up, you hear the voice of a dead relative. We have stories of people getting phone calls but not picking them up from the deceased. We have stories of people picking the phone up and hearing a strange, otherworldly voice. Sometimes I cover them, sometimes I don't. I think the most intense one we covered was the guy who worked at the call center. It's become one of my favorite stories we've covered on the show, especially in the back half of the show. The guy gets a phone call, he works customer support, and a customer calls up and says, hey, I don't know where the light switch is. My internet's not working and I can't find the light switch in my house. What's going on? Why can't I get online? I'll put that episode of the show notes. Like, that has become one of my favorite stories we've covered. Super intense. I get you can probably kind of get, you're like, is the guy dead? Maybe that's why I'm including him in an example of dead people calling. I'll put that episode in the show notes. I read a lot of these accounts. I don't cover them that much because they all kind of have the same setup. Somebody died, and either the person knows that they're dead and they get a phone call the same night the person died. Basically, these two stories are perfect examples of hundreds of stories like them. You know someone's dead, you know they can't call you, but you get a call from them, or you don't know someone's dead. You get a weird phone call in the middle of the night, and the next morning you find out that person died that night. These are two very good examples of both types of activity. The reason why I wanted to cover them is for two reasons. One, I do wonder why he didn't pick up the phone. I find that very curious. Here's the thing. As a paranormal researcher in a vacuum, I would say, well, why wouldn't you pick up the phone? Why wouldn't you want to hear a voice from the other side? But that's so clinical about the thing. I do understand why a brother would be hesitant to hear the voice of his dead brother. And I think even a paranormal researcher, if that had happened to them, if their kid died in a motocross accident, and then later that day they get a phone call and they see it's their son. It's a picture of him doing a motocross trick. You're like, oh, the trick that killed him. Why did I take that photo in that moment and instantly change it to his caller ID? Even a paranormal researcher, it's too close. It's one thing if you wait a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months and then contact a medium, right? There's been time to process these things. And even then, it's your kid talking through somebody else. Versus it's the day of the funeral and the phone rings. Part of you does want to say, pick up the phone. The other thing is, what if you do hit the phone and go, Jonathan? Jonathan, is that you? And you just hear screaming in the background. And then the phone dies. You could rationally tell yourself that was all some sort of weird network glitch. There's some sort of network glitch, and it was the static coming through, it was a solar flare, da-da-da-da-da. But in the back of your mind, you'd always wonder if your brother was burning in hell. Ignorance is bliss, is what I'm saying. It's interesting. As a paranormal researcher, you'd be like, yeah, totally pick up the phone. But if it was so close to you, maybe you wouldn't. Like, I think Philip did do the right thing. He just said, we're all home now. And in a way, I think he wasn't just saying, don't bug us, we're eating ice cream cake, we're all back home. It's that we are home and you are home. You're in this home that we're going to go to someday and things like that. That's how I kind of read the quote, right? It wasn't like, we're all home now, don't bug us, Jonathan. Very interesting. What would you do if you got a call from a deceased loved one? I mean, that's kind of a personal question. But the other reason why I wanted to talk about these two stories, and again, there's dozens, if not hundreds of these stories out there. They're pretty easy to find. Is because I believe that these stories are very easy to find, and I think they're only going to get easier to find. I've gone to several ghost conventions. I've spoken to professional ghost hunters, and we see all the devices they have. Now, people normally do have cell phones on them all the time. I think that these are going to become integral to a ghost hunter's toolkit, other than just being able to call for help. You know, we would do ghost hunting back in the day, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. We'd go out to these fields that were supposedly haunted. We'd go into areas where the risk of being attacked by a dog, a hobo, or both at the same time were moderately high. So I always try to make sure that at least someone had some sort of cell phone on them. In case one of us got attacked, we could call for help. But I think as we go further, you're going to have your cell phone on you, and they probably will develop apps that, not like a spirit box, because we have its own thing for that, but basically make it so it's, I don't know if you could develop an app for this, but your phone's basically open for anyone to call. Because both of these stories, remember, it required the spirit to know the phone number they were calling. I just put that together. I just thought of that. So maybe ghost hunters should, they're walking around a haunted museum, they're yelling their phone number out of the top of their lungs. They're all 541 555. They're like, hey, did you pick up anything on the EVP reading? They're like, yes, you screaming at the top of your lungs the entire time, the phone number. Maybe that is something that you start to see mediums do. You start to see ghost hunters do. When they come into a haunted location, they say, I'm going to tell you my phone number. It's 1-800-CALL-GHST. That's my phone number. 1-800-CALL-GHST. Call Ghost. You call me, ghosts. And then you go on your normal ghost hunting routine. You're setting up your devices. You're getting your cameras ready. You're getting your little tape recorders. All of that set up. And every so often, you would repeat your number. 1-800-CALL-GHOST. And then you go into the next room. You do all this stuff. And you're basically spreading your phone number. It may be possible for spirits to be able to contact you via phone. Now, this has not been mentioned before, as far as I know, on any ghost hunting panel or anything like that. You're getting groundbreaking information. I've never come across this before. I mean, not to pat myself too much on the back, but this could be a game changer. A ghost being able to use vocal cords to talk to you seems very, very, very difficult. Most people don't hear ghosts. And there's a class of ghosts sometimes that you can hear what they're saying, but more likely you're going to see them, or they're going to manipulate some sort of object, or they're going to make a light flash. You're going to ask like a question, am I alone in this room? 1 flash for yes, 2 flashes for no, and then it goes, zzz, and then you go, oh, I'm not alone. There's a ghost in here, and it's manipulating this toy. If ghosts are manipulating the energy fields around us, if that's far easier for them to do than to speak to us, they possibly could use phones. They possibly could talk to us through the phone easier than their vocal cords vibrating and then the air in front of them turning into sound waves, or however this works. The sound waves reach my ear and then my brain processes it. There's a lot of physical things going on there versus manipulating the electrical fields. See, the thing is like ghost hunters don't announce their phone numbers when they're at locations. It's never been done before. You go into a location, you announce your phone number, you do it quite a few times. You make sure different rooms hear it, and then you continue on your ghost hunt. And if you do have a ghost manipulating something in front of you, tap this glass once for yes, twice for no. Touch this light once for yes, twice for no. Make it click on and off. And once you get that connection, you could then repeat your phone number again. Is it easier for you to call me? My phone number, 1-800-CALL-GHST. And then you just set your phone down. Wouldn't that be insane? Wouldn't that be so crazy? Because again, we have a ton of stories of ghosts calling people, but they know the numbers. Even the guy who called the call center, that story, he knew the number to call. It was the number of the people who provided his Wi-Fi router. Giving out your phone number at a haunted location may actually give people the ability to speak to spirits. Kind of terrifying, too, if you think about it. In the wrong hands, could you imagine a bunch of kids playing with a Ouija board and then giving their cell phone number out? What type of chaos that could cause. But you heard it here first on Dead Rabbit Radio. No one's ever talked about this before. But there has been that connection between the phone and the dead for a long time, really, since before it was invented. But it's kind of fallen to the wayside. We have all these other devices. Just give the ghost your phone number. We can see what happens. I might do that at the next Paranormal Ghost Conference. That'd be really cool to test out. Fascinating stuff. You heard it here first at Dead Rabbit Radio. Soft pink aurora. I'm going to go ahead and touch the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. Everyone climb on board as SPA flies us out from this neighborhood all the way to Michigan. I know I sound different. I know it's always a little jarring, but I'm all stuffy now. I took a bit of a break in between that last part and this part. I'm just acknowledging that, right? Because otherwise you're like, wow, what happened to this guy? Did he go out and hail a tree? Get all the pollen stuffed up in his nose? Obviously, I sound different. I apologize for that. It's also 6 a.m, a couple hours later when I'm recording this part. But anyways, we're flying all the way out to Michigan. Specifically, I didn't know this was a real place. It sounds adorable. Specifically, we're headed out to the Porcupine Mountains. It's pretty dope, right? You're like, no, Jason, it's super sharp. We have multiple people injured every single day hiking through the Porcupine Mountains. I don't know if they're called that because the mountains look like porcupines, like big, sharp mountaintops. And they get stuck in you. You're like, now I have to go to work tomorrow. I have an entire mountain stuck in my foot. I'm assuming there's just probably a lot of porcupines around there. But, we don't know, either way. We're walking through, I mean, it's easily Google. I can easily Google it, right? But it's 6 a.m, I'm all stuffed up. Let me just record this segment. Because actually, I'm going to do more research. I started doing more research into Porcupine Mountains. Apparently, there's a lot of paranormal activity in these mountains. But we're going to focus on one story in particular, and if I find anything else really notable, we'll cover it because it's adorable, right? The name of it's adorable, but also a lot of people say this is a place known for its supernatural shenanigans. We're flying all the way out to the Porcupine Mountains. We're about to meet a young man. We don't have his real name. We're going to call him Julian. He's 24 years old at the time of this story, and he loves hiking. He used to hike with other people, but he started to become a solo hiker. And this time was the very first and last time he would ever hike alone. His goal with this plan was there was a 12-mile loop in the Porcupine Mountains that would take him through some old growth forest. Beautiful, right? You see like a tree that's older than America. You're like, wow, dude, look at that. And you keep on walking. I'm not a fan of hiking. It's like, oh, look at that shrub over there. And another one to my left. Oh, I'm losing my mind. I don't really see the appeal of it. But people do love hiking. You know, you get to walk around and see nature, squirrels jumping up and down, trees growing up into the sky, all sorts of stuff. This particular loop would take him through some old growth forest, as well as it had some challenging parts too. It was kind of a hilly region, and some parts of the loop were steep. So it's a good workout. It's a 12-mile loop. It's a 2-night hike. And he's like, dude, this is dope. Like, this is kind of what I built up to, a solo hike. Let's go. So Julian does, he takes off. And on the very first night, he's about 4 miles into this loop. And he says, you know what? It's time to set up camp. So he finds a place. This is at the bottom of a valley. He finds a place to camp. He sets it up about 20 meters off trail. He sets his camp up. He's kind of chilling out down there. And he starts to pick up on the fact that this place kind of makes him feel uneasy. He hasn't felt like this anywhere else during the hike. But, you know, maybe it's just first solo hike night jitters. In this valley, while he's setting up the tent, he goes, it gave me a weird feeling. He goes, it was also quiet. Quieter than I thought it would have been. Nice, right? But you do want to hear, like, animals running around. Little ones, right? Not like Mama Bear looking for honey. You want to hear, you know, leaves rustling, little dude, little raccoon stomping through the dried leaves. He goes, but you didn't hear anything down there. It was quite odd. It was almost like all the animals had scattered from the area. He goes, also, there was no wind. There's no wind where he set up camp. However, his spot seemed unseasonably chilly. But, doesn't really think too much of it at the time. At this point, just over time, the sounds of nature returned. Gets everything set up. Night falls. He's in his tent. And he can't fall asleep. He's just laying there in the tent and he's listening to nature. Bugs chittering, random animals walking through the forest. Just lays there listening to it. But then everything goes quiet. And it's notable. It's like, what? Where'd all the bugs go? I no longer hear scampering rascals outside my tent. Just quiet. He said it was more than just all the animals stopped moving, which would be odd enough. He said it actually seemed like the world had been muted. Again, he doesn't think too much of it at the time. It's odd, but he's not alarmed. He's laying in his tent and he can't hear anything around him. But that's when he doesn't hear, but starts to feel something. Julian begins to feel the earth underneath his tent begin to gently rumble. He's laying there in his sleeping bag and he's like, why is the ground rumbling? And almost as an answer to his question as to what the sensation was, he begins to hear something. He begins to hear what sounds like a large group of people marching in unison. So many people marching at the same time. Foot up, foot down, foot up, foot down. Or better, left, right, left, right. Left, right. So many people marching in your direction, but it's making the ground rumble. And it's not just that. That would be terrifying enough, because even though he's 20 yards off trail, he's not completely off the beaten path, but you think about how many people it would take to make the earth move just by marching. He goes, but it wasn't just that. Because you go, maybe it's an earthquake, right? Maybe it's just an earthquake in this old growth forest and a 400-year-old tree is going to fall on my tent. Not just that, he can hear them talking. So it's not an earthquake that feels like people marching and sounds like people marching. No, people are marching towards him. So many that it's shaking the ground. He can hear them speaking, but he can't make out a single word that they're saying. It's a low conversational tone, but there's so many of them. It's that indistinct buzz. Like when you're at a party. Everyone's talking, everyone's having a good time, except for you. Maybe you are a party animal, maybe you're not. Maybe Julian is, we don't know. But the fact of the matter is he's supposed to be in the middle of nowhere. Maybe you'd have 5 hikers walk by, maybe a group of 10. He compared it that at first it sounded like dozens and dozens of people whispering to each other. But as the marching continued, the conversation got closer, the conversation got louder. He said eventually it reached a volume of a group of people casually talking to each other all at the same time. And then he compared it to the sound of sitting in the middle of a cafeteria and everyone is having full volume conversations. 100 tables, all of them filled with close friends just talking to each other. And still, he cannot make out a single word that they're saying. The ground is not rumbling at this point, it's vibrating. And he's like, what could this possibly be? And almost as if to test, like, am I imagining this? Am I just losing my mind? Am I nervous? He looks over at his water bottle that is sitting there on the ground, and he looks inside and he sees the water inside vibrating. So if this is a hallucination, it's a vivid one. It's definitely not him just thinking there's vibration. He's actually watching now the vibrations affect other things in his tent. He can't figure out what's going on. He picks his phone up and he looks. It's 2 a.m, which is kind of what he figured. It was really, really late at night. Doesn't really help him figure out. He's like, oh, it's the 2 a.m. march through the forest. Doesn't really give him a clue as to what could be going on, but it kind of gives him a bit of idea of, you know where you're at, now you know when you're at. Then he looks out the moonfly of his tent. I didn't know this was a thing. He looked out the moonfly of his tent and he sees moonlight. He looked out the moonfly because he started to think, if there's this many people marching around at 2 a.m, I should see some sign of them. I'm hearing them, I'm feeling them, I should see signs of them. He goes, I looked out the moonfly in the tent. Sure enough, I saw moonlight shining down on Earth. He goes, I didn't see a single flashlight. As you would imagine if dozens and dozens and dozens of people were marching. He goes, I didn't see any other light out there. So whoever was doing this, they would have had to have been doing it in the dark. There were no lanterns, there were no flashlights, there were no torches. Nothing else was producing light in this area except for the moon above. At this point, he goes, it sounds like hundreds of people are marching in this area. And more alarmingly, they're headed towards the tent. He can just gauge on how the sound's working, how he's feeling the ground, how everything's getting louder. He goes, there has to be hundreds of these people. First, I just thought, a couple dozen, 50, 60 maybe. Now he's thinking 400 or 500 people. How could you make this much noise and not be a legion? And that is when the noise stops. The vibration ends. This valley, once again, has been muted. Julian's sitting in the tent, and he becomes overwhelmed with the sensation that he's surrounded. There's no one out there. He can't hear anybody. And it doesn't even make sense that a giant army of people could even get here. Yet he felt them outside the tent, staring at him. This is a threat, Julian thinks. I don't even know if he's thinking at this point, or if he's just working off raw survival instinct. But his body is telling him, there's hundreds of people outside your tent. They're staring at you. You're in the middle of nowhere. You don't know who these people are. You don't know what they want. It's probably nothing good. Julian grabs his pistol. He clicks off the safety. And yet the world is still muted outside of this tent. He's ready, though. Whatever happens next, he's not going down without a fight. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the entire area. It's deafening. He hears it, he feels it. The entire tent begins rocking back and forth as a shockwave just rips through the entire area. And in fact, Julian, the first thing that popped in his head, the very first thing he thought was, oh my God, I pulled the trigger. I accidentally let off a round in my tent. And he believes that was the sound, that was the explosion, that was this violent shockwave. And then he thinks, maybe a fighter jet flew overhead. Low, fast, breaking the sound barrier, and what he felt was the sonic boom ripping through the valley. He's processing these thoughts at the speed of light, right? He's completely disoriented. He had a threat outside of his tent, numerous threats. He didn't have enough ammo for him. He knew that he couldn't really defend himself against hundreds of people. He's like, oh, good thing I brought all of these guns. Good thing I am a armorer for the military, and I like to take my work with me. His threat level is already so high, and then there's this massive shockwave. Just poof. He's trying to figure out what it is. And in fact, he starts to hear the shockwave disappear into the distance. He didn't hear it approaching, but he definitely heard it leaving. He's sitting there in the tent and he's trying to calm the ringing in his ears. He's trying to reorient himself. He still doesn't feel safe. he still feels that his tent is surrounded. Or if they're not immediately outside this tent, whoever was out here may have retreated back into the woods, but they're watching him. He doesn't feel safe at this moment. He still has his gun, which he may have accidentally fired a round from. We'll get to that in a second. But all of the thoughts of his personal safety leave for a moment. Right now, he has the unshakable urge to pee. He has to pee. He can't stop it. He gets his 10,000 lumen flashlight, jumps out of his tent, spins around looking in the woods, holding the pistol in one hand, the flashlight in another. Or maybe he's doing that thing where he holds them both at the same time. I don't know. It depends on how cool you want to picture this scene. But he's looking around. There's no one there. He whips his other weapon out, pees as quickly as he can, jumps back into the tent, looks over, grabs his cell phone, checks the time, 4 a.m. That's not right. Julian thinks that can't be possible. I just checked my phone a few minutes ago. It was 2. This was the end of Julian's sanity. Everything else he could in some way explain. But the fact that 5 minutes ago he checked his phone and 2 hours have now passed, Julian begins to silently cry in his tent. He crawls into a sleeping bag and stayed awake until the sun rose. Julian said he then hiked the next 8 miles on 0 sleep, and he has not gone solo backpacking since. He said, he tried to really rationale this. He really tried to understand what was going on, because although he had seen weird stuff before, nothing like this, he goes, I did check my gun the next day, and I hadn't fired any rounds from my gun. All my bullets were accounted for. So that's not what caused that. He really was trying to figure this out, because it just didn't make any sense. And when he got back, his dad, hey, how was the trip? His son's all like a zombie. He's like, I can't sleep. I didn't sleep at all. That's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I had the worst experience. I'm never going hiking by myself again. And he told his dad the story, and his dad goes, well, it's possible there's a rational explanation for this. There's a military base about 100 miles from where you said you camped at. Because it's possible that they were doing a test. They were flying a fighter jet really low, caused the sonic boom. And that's what you heard. Julian accepts that. He goes, it's definitely possible. Because that's what it sounded like, and that's what it felt like. A jet flying overhead. And he goes, the fact that I could hear the shockwave moving away would make you think it was a fast-flying jet. He goes, but the problem is, Dad, I really appreciate that hypothesis. It makes me feel a little bit better. But that doesn't explain the marching footsteps. And it doesn't explain the people talking. Like the shockwave could have been the vibrating ground. It also doesn't explain the 2 hours of lost time. But it does give him possibly a small answer to a big question. What happened this night? It's a fascinating story. It's funny. You could look at different elements of it. We covered a long time ago on the show the story of the Night Marchers. That is a ghost story. I don't even think you could call it an urban legend. There's been so many sightings of it in Hawaii, where there is this regular procession of these ghosts that will march through. I don't remember exactly what island or what city it was on. They'll march through this area, and they will march along paths where there are now buildings put up. This is a haunting that's existed before, cities were constructed. You had downtown skyscrapers and all of that. The story we covered, there was a janitorial worker who saw the Night Marchers walk through the office complex. And the problem is, if I remember correctly, if you look at them or if they notice you looking at them, they take your soul and then you become part of the Night March. And people would see them not only in downtown areas, but they'd see them winding through the wilderness areas as well. That's kind of the first thing you think of when you hear about the marching. But obviously, this one had more of a physical effect on the environment. Ghost marching is one thing, and it's pretty cool. But marching to the point where it's actually shaking the ground, that makes you think that it's a physical group. You think that it's actual people in there. You think it's actual people marching through there, but how are they doing it without lights? How are you able to move that many people through this area along this hiking trail? It's steep, right? I mean, I know Hannibal did it. I know you can move armies over mountains, but usually it's not in the Porcupine Mountains. So we have that. We have the rumbling of the ground. There's an easy answer, and then there's a paranormal answer. The easy answer is, I'm sure a low-flying jet that breaks the sound barrier over you, right over your head, probably scrambles your brains. Before the jet probably even hits you, it's probably messing with a lot of the gray matter, a lot of the chemicals. They're like, run, hide. We don't know what's happening, but the little chemicals in your brain are acting up. Because this invisible blast is about to hit them. Okay, maybe they can't tell the future. They're like, oh, my dopamine level is telling me the enemy is coming. No, but you know what I mean? Like a shockwave passing through your skull is probably going to make you see and feel things that aren't real. In fact, we did a whole episode on that. I'll put it in the show notes about a bunch of U.S. veterans who were coming back from Syria in this very recent civil war that ended a couple months ago. And they began seeing ghosts, and it turns out that they were dealing with some serious micro tears in their brain because all of these men worked artillery, and they were firing so many rounds an hour. But even that story, I mean, it's tragic. That is a sad episode. I'll put it in the show notes, but listener beware. That's a sad episode. They began hallucinating far after the combat. This guy was hallucinating. That's what it was. He was hallucinating before that jet flew overhead and that shockwave just blasted through the area. But those are all rational answers, and honestly, I think you could probably accept that, and I think Julian would probably want those answers to be real. But the time loss, the being surrounded, the sensation of a bunch of people looking at you, hearing the shockwave shoot off into the distance, all of those also point to the possibility of alien abduction. It could be alien abduction. Except for one detail. Something that I've observed personally while being a ghost hunter. And it's the only detail that makes me think it's not an alien encounter. And that is the need to pee. We've talked about this on past episodes, but I'll reiterate it here. One thing I've noticed in my personal time of being a ghost hunter, I used to go to haunted locations, and it wouldn't just happen to me, but it would happen with other people, that we would be at a location, and before something happened, be it a shadow man, be it some weird noise out in the field, be it anything, right? There's only two things that can come off the top of my head right now, but obviously it could be anything. One or more people in the group of ghost hunters has the overwhelming need to urinate. And I saw it happen enough that I started going, that actually might be an indicator that paranormal activity is about to start. And it truly is overwhelming. Let's look back at Julian's story. He believed he was surrounded. A shockwave ripped through the area. He was disoriented. He was deafened. And yet he still needed to go to the bathroom so badly that even though he believed that the people watching him had retreated a little bit into the forest, he still believed they were still out there. He came out with his flashlight and his handgun because he thought there was a physical threat, but he had to pee so badly. You have no control over it. And that's what I'm talking about. Imagine you in that situation and you just really have to go to the bathroom. You can hold it. You can hold it, right? You can hold it. It'll eventually go away. But that's not what we're talking about. Imagine putting yourself, you believe there's a threat outside the tent, you have to pee so badly you leave the safety of the tent. And you're looking around in the darkness with your flashlight and your gun because you believe there's a threat out there, yet you still left to pee. That's a part of the story that I think a lot of people, and maybe even some of the listeners of the show, would go, well, that's unbelievable. Why would he go out to pee? Because it's truly overwhelming when it's paranormal-induced urination. We don't have stories of having to urinate beyond belief associated with aliens. Time loss, yeah. Feeling surrounded, yeah. All those other things hit the alien thing, but the urinate thing makes me wonder if this is a ghost. It really makes me wonder what this was. Like, obviously, we don't have any idea. He doesn't have any idea. There's a couple things you can explain away, but truly, truly unexplainable. And there's so many different fragments that you don't know which way to go with this story. What I find fascinating, and again, we'll wrap it up like this, is I wonder if this phenomenon is replicatable. You go, well, Jason, Porcupine Mountains, we don't have a lot of reports of these sonic booms. Yeah, but you'd have paranormal. There are other paranormal reports in the Porcupine Mountains, and I'll cover those in upcoming episodes. But yeah, there's nothing like this. And you go, well, Jason, if there was a sonic boom every night or every month or once every 15 years or once every 100 years, I mean, you think you'd have at least one other report of this thing. Not if, and this is what's interesting about the paranormal, not if you can only experience it if you're right where he was camping. Even though he heard the people marching from a whiles away, you would only hear it if you were in that place where he was at. Remember, he went down there and all the sound quieted, and it was unseasonably cold, and he felt weird. He didn't feel like that anywhere else on the hike. He didn't even feel that way while he was on the trail, just 20 yards or 20 meters. I don't remember exactly which one it was. Once he left the trail and simply walked 20 yards to this little place, that's when he began to experience this stuff. So imagine you were on that trail and someone was camping down 20 yards off the trail. The person camping would hear the noise, would hear the sonic boom, would hear the marchers marching, would feel surrounded, while someone on that trail would hear nothing. So you would not have other reports of this. It would be so localized. Possible, right? I don't think it was a fighter jet because there's too many other things. I think you can explain away the sonic boom. You could even argue that there was a UFO and the fighter jet chased it away. I mean, you can go anywhere with this story. But I wonder if it's replicatable. I'm getting off topic already. I'm kind of going back to stuff I already covered, but I'm really fascinated by this story. If it is localized, if you have to be in that little valley where he was at, and again, if you're 20 yards in any given direction, you would not experience this at all. This could be happening fairly regularly, but there's nothing there to hear it. So localized, so rare. I mean, fascinating stuff. Absolutely fascinating story. And I do want to keep looking through the Porcupine Mountains, not literally. I'm going to do it from my computer to see. But I didn't see any stories like this, but apparently there's a lot of paranormal stuff up there. We'll keep investigating it. And if you know of any Porcupine Mountain stories, send them over. I'd love to see them, and I'll give you a shout out on the show for sending it over, because these mountains do seem to have some sort of paranormal force over the entire area. But this was a story of one man in one place experiencing something that even after decades of paranormal research, I can only call unexplainable. There really is no one theory that can explain everything that happened to Julian. In a world of bizarre stories, one of the most mysterious ones involved a little patch of land somewhere in the mountains. And it makes you wonder how many stories out there have not been told, because the timing and the location is so precise that ever since humanity has been able to write or even speak, no one has ever experienced them. Truly a bizarre tale. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today.